Hi everybody, welcome again to another program of Yeshiva Classroom. We're also known as Yeshiva Class YouTube 3-minute Torah lessons on the internet. That's Yeshiva Class YouTube 3-minute Torah lessons. Yeshiva Class YouTube 3-minute Torah lessons. So basically, we're going to get right on to the subject matter, which is bringing Judaism to the masses. Hopefully, you'll get to understand the beauty and the authenticity of our Bible, our Jewish Bible, the only Bible that we know, the Old Testament. There's no other testament but the Torah, which is the Old Testament, as opposed to any other Bible that the other ideologies want to lead you astray with. But we want to speak to the Jewish people primarily, and how unfortunate it is that the knowledge of Torah and Judaism is so poor. It's like you're having adults, college professors, and grown-up people who are being fed basically Bible stories from a learned person. Unfortunately, they don't realize the level of Jewish background that the average observant Jew has, and they continue to speak and to lecture as opposed to the student doing the work. Now let me explain. We have a Torah, and I want you people to write down some of these sentences that I'm going to throw out to you, because then you can look them up in your Bible, in your Jewish Bible, Old Testament, known to the Gentile world, because they don't have good translations of the Jewish Bible in English. So look at the get an art scroll, ART, or something that's recommended by the Orthodox communities to get a good English translation. But basically, right now we're going to focus on Deuteronomy 24. Exodus. Write this down. Exodus. Get a pen. Got to have a pen in your hand. Exodus 24:12. Exodus chapter 24, verse 12. Over there it says that God is speaking to Moses and to the people and saying that I have given you the stone tablets, right? The 10 Commandments on stone. I have given you the written Torah, right? Dictated to Moses, 31 verse 24 in Deuteronomy. Dictated the Bible to Moses. And also the commandments which you should teach them, and also the commandments that you should teach them, right? That's a very important phrase. You have the commandments that you should teach them. God is speaking to Moses, giving you the stone tablets. 1, I have given you the written Torah, right? The 5 books of Moses, Old Testament. And 3, the commandments that you should teach them. You should teach them. What does that mean, that last phrase? That's very significant, because this is where we get the oral Torah, the Talmud, which is so important. And people, especially in the Yeshiva Katanas, don't try to make it a very important subject, but they only have limited time, and therefore the average student does not get much out of the teachings. Jewish subjects matter because there is little time left for the English subjects and whatever have you, basketball practice. If I ever inherited, and I'm not inheritance, but I come upon a windfall of money, I would first of all make sure that it would not go to the day schools that have interscholastic basketball and all those interscholastic sports activities where they are formalized into groups and study, practice, and traveling and practice again. And being that the time is limited, how can you possibly allocate time to have all these sports activities? And therefore that should be eliminated, and time spent on the understanding, appreciation of the Torah and the Talmud. You know, you heard it saying the Talmud Torah, right, that they had in the old days when we were growing up, that the after-school programs, they were called Talmud Torahs. But did they teach Talmud? Oh, well, you know, it's too difficult. How are they going to get it? You need time. You know, what is Talmud? It's the time-consuming study of intricate details of seemingly not applicable importance relevant to the time. It's the time-consuming study of intricate details that don't seem apropos to the present day, but nevertheless it motivates the mind and changes character to a positive level, and changes character to a positive level, with all the logic and the positions that are held by the rabbis in the study that they present, that subtly motivates your mind and has a positive effect on your character, changing your character by the study of these great men and the teachings that they brought down. Now here, this is very important. You know, I brought down Exodus 24:12, and it says, God gave the stone tablets, the written Torah, and the commands that you should teach them, and the command that you should teach them. And that is the oral Torah. That was handed down to Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our teacher, and there are approximately 40 steps or generations or teachers who carried this oral tradition down from Moshe Rabbeinu all the way to Rav Ashi, who put together the Talmud. But let me backtrack. You see, Moses handed it to Joshua, Joshua to Pinchas the Kohen, Pinchas to Eli the high priest, Eli to Shmuel, the prophet Shmuel, and Shmuel to David HaMelech, and then to the prophet Achia, and then to Eliyahu, then to Elisha, Yehoiada, and Zechariah, so forth and so on, all the way down to Rav Ashi. Now, the point I want to make out is that, you know, this massive tomes of study and teachings were impossible to really hand down with orally, and really what took place was the top scholar of, for instance, Pinchas, the Kohen's court, was elected to capitalize the teachings of the previous generational rabbinical court leader, the rabbinical court leader of the previous court. And for instance, Moshe Rabbeinu, Joshua, he had a court. Pinchas the Kohen had a court. Eli had a court of rabbis, and even down to Rabbeinu HaKodesh, or Rabbi Judah HaNasi, who wrote down the Mishnah because it was orally impossible, practically speaking, because of lack of students and the Roman destruction and breaking up of the yeshiva by these bad, evil Romans. So what they did, Rav Ashi and his court, which consisted of Rav and Shmuel, and there's about 11 other scholars. So what happened was, previous generation, the leader took notes. He took written notes of what was said, and he passed it on to the next generational rabbinical leaders. So, you know, you're not going to say, well, it's going to be totally memorized. It was the top scholar rabbi who took notes from the previous generation and memorized what was given to him, and with those notes handed it down to the next generation, right? So that's what we have when we came to, for instance, let me just give you an example. When we came to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when he wrote down the when he wrote down the Mishnah, right? When he wrote down the oral Torah, and he had scholars that were very erudite, and they also wrote down commentaries on the work that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi compiled, right, in his Mishnah, the Mishnayos, which he compiled. But there was 11 rabbis in his court, including Rav and Shmuel. Now, if you look into a Chumash, which is the 5 books of Moses, and you see a commentary by Rashi, the great rabbinical scholar was it the 1200s, was it, or whatever, and you'll see that that Rav and Shmuel, two of the disciples in the court of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, wrote commentaries on the Torah that they received from the previous generation. And we're talking about Sifra, Sifri, and Rashi brings them down in his commentary that we usually find in all the Bible books, Jewish Bible books, Rashi, and he brings in Sifra, Sifri, Mechilta. These were written by Rav and Shmuel on the Torah that was handed down from Sinai, right? Moses was instructed to teach the commands, to teach them. Looked at Deuteronomy Exodus 24:12, and also Deuteronomy 4:12, right? You got the 12 at the end. Okay? Look at Deuteronomy, look at Exodus 24:12 and Deuteronomy 4:12. And you see over there, God is saying, I have given you the stone tablets. I've given you the written Bible. I have, and the commands to teach them. The commands to teach them. And that's what is so significant, because Moshe, in his instruction from God, right? He received it from God Almighty. He received the oral Torah, the explanation of the Bible. And it wasn't until 34 generations later that when it was decided by the leader of the court to write down the oral Torah, the Mishnah, that Rav and Shmuel, two members of the court, also wrote down the commentary of the Chumash, of the 5 books of Moses, the Sifra, the Sifri, that's what they're known as, and the Mechilta, which are all commentaries on the books of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So that's significant to understand that it's not haphazard that what we study in the oral Torah, and it's unfortunate that people don't realize the significance and the sanctity of these great works. As I said, Rav and Shmuel wrote down the Sifra, the Sifri, and that was handed down through the generations from Moses, and they wrote it down at the time of their leader, rabbinical leader, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who concentrated on the oral Torah, writing it down, as opposed to Rav and Shmuel writing the commentary on a brief commentary on the 5 books of Moses. So that's significant because the average person doesn't realize the significance of where we are coming from. And basically we're coming from God, who handed it down to Moses, who handed it down to Joshua and his court, to Pinchas and his court, the Kohen Eli, who was the head of the temple, right? And then to Shmuel, his disciple, and then Shmuel and his court handed it down to David did Achia, and Achia Eliyahu, right? Eliyahu Hanavi, right? The prophet Eliyahu, and Eliyahu to Elisha, and Elisha to Yehoiada, and Yehoiada was the husband of Yehosheba, who saved the infant king Yoash, continuing the lineage from David down. And Yehoiada handed down to his son Zechariah and his court, and Zechariah already were into Hosea, the Nevi'im, the prophets, the minor prophets, and to Amos and his court, Yeshayahu down to Isaiah, to Micha, and then to Yoel, Nahum, Habakkuk, to Sphania, and so forth and so on. So it's not a haphazard 21st century type of instruction. These are from Moses and from God, and it's so significant that we today study these works. But unfortunately, adult education, be what it is, says we're going to have scholars and we're going to give you some nice words of wisdom, you know, goes in one ear, out the other ear, and they pay these scholar great nice sums of money for coming there, scholar in residence, and what is needed, well, it's like, you know, a child given Bible stories, but in this case it's not children that are given Bible stories, it's adults. And the adults, by and large, do not have a strong basic foundation. Oh, you come to the synagogue, for instance, the Young Israel of Woodmere, and you see so many people praying with sincerity and piety on a weekday, you know, on a different minyanim, and you say, wow, this is a very learned group of people. But if you consider the fact that there's over 1,000 members in that Young Israel of Woodmere, and you see a few people in each minyan looking like they're davening with piety, and therefore the whole congregation and its congregants must be observant and knowledgeable. But it's not so. And that's why I've asked you time and time again that the adult education is a process and failure that continues to perpetuate itself from hundreds of years before. We don't need speakers, we need congregants to do the work. And that's why we have to go back to the old Beis HaMedrash form, which is where you do the work. And today, with the art scrolls and the other organizations that have the Talmud translated into understandable English with footnotes, that is how a person should spend his time, because Talmud is a time-consuming study of intricate ideas that don't seem applicable to present-day situations, don't seem applicable. But subtly, we're not aware that the study of Talmud motivates the mind and changes the character. Look at a person, look at his character who has studied and learned and spent time consuming study in trying to figure out, together with a partner or together with his soul mate, another friend, to figure out the lines and the work that's involved with the understanding of the Torah, because that is our ticket. It's Deuteronomy 24:12, right? Excuse me, you want to get it straight. It's Exodus 24:12, right? God says, the stone tablets I have given you, the written Bible I have given you, Deuteronomy 31:24, and the commands that you should teach them. The commands that you should teach them. God is speaking to Moses. That's the oral Torah, which was transmitted from generation to generation by the scholar, the respected scholar in that generation who headed the court, right? And that's how it was transmitted. The scholar, chief scholar, took notes. He took written notes, and with those written notes, he orally transmitted it to the next generation. This is where Rambam, the Moshe Maimonides writes. Rambam, Yad Chazaka. This is how it was transmitted. So that is so significant, and the idea is that we have to do study. We have to make sure that our co-religionists learn, and that's why I say, for instance, in the synagogue where you have a synagogue, a prayer room, and then you walk out across the hall, and you have of equal size a gymnasium. Now, well, you say, well, the people want it. Oh, you got to get members. How are people going to enjoy themselves, their spare time? We need a gym. Well, listen, if you need a gym, you want to listen to what the people want, fine. But there shouldn't be any gym next to the house of worship. You want to go to the gym, go out in the street and shoot the ball onto the hoops, and then throw the ball for a touchdown, and then throw the curveball. You know, they got you hooked one season to the next season, right? Okay, so that's what it is. So how do you rectify the situation? Turn the gym into a Beis HaMedrash. What does that mean? All day long, the synagogue is open, and you have a mashgiach. What's a mashgiach? A mashgiach is a learned person who stands in the room and answers questions that the students will bring up during their study time. That's in this quiet base of Medrash. They learn in small groups or together with a chaver. But that's where the gym should be. The gym should be the base of Medrash. And you say, well, we'll lose members. Well, okay, listen. Yeah, you want to lose members, but the people want it. The people want it. What can I do for you? Okay? So listen, that's the story. So some people out there are going to say, well, you're right. You know, that's right. People have to know the basics. And what they should do in the study hall, we should be, some people don't have any book to study. So the mashgiach, right, the head of the base of Medrash, he has a Torah, a written Torah in English. He has a written art scrolls translated Gemara, right, with footnotes. He has a pile of them. And he has basic book on ideology, Rejoice, O Youth, or Behold a People. Two significant, motivating, ideological books about Judaism with commentaries that go back to the source in the Chumash, the chapter and the verse. Boy, there's a person out there say, you know, he said, somebody I saw, he said, oh, I like what you're saying. Well, that's fine, you like what you're saying, but if you like it and you put it into practice, where are the practitioners? You know, in Exodus chapter 32, when there was the feasting over the golden calf that they worship brought in by the Gentile Erev Rav, meaning the new converts that left with the Jewish people when they saw all the miracles that was had for them. But when it got bad, the converts who really did not go through a conversion according to halacha saw things getting bad. They resorted to their old ways of worshiping their idol with merrymaking, feasting, drinking, dancing, drunken stupors, and that's what it's brought down in the Chumash, right? Moses saw down, came down from the mountain. The people were yelling and dancing and drunk. That's not Judaism. So what happened? They were tried. The guilty person, the Jews who committed these atrocities of idolatry. By the way, this is being recorded on the 5th month, May, 8th day of the common calendar, right? It's not AD, the year of our Lord. We don't refer to that. But we refer to CE, the common era. AD refers to the year of our Lord, and we don't have a Lord, a man God. So we don't acknowledge AD, but we call it CE, common era, and BCE, before the common era. Yeah, what happened over there? You know, you get a little tangent. No, I'll stay a little bit over here. That they were tried and they were found guilty, and 3,000 were executed for idolatry, worshiping idols of the Erev Rav and the Jews. So then they said, well, were they found guilty? And then Exodus 30, chapter 32, 35 said, then a plague was let loose. Plague. Why was the plague? Why did Jews have to suffer more? Because it was for those people who stood by and didn't do anything. Yeah, they didn't participate in the idol worshiping or the immorality, right? But they nevertheless acquiesced and let things roll by instead of forming a group and protesting. And that's how we have today. Where is the study hall? I don't mean speakers and scholars and residents droning on and on with great stuff, especially on your high level, especially if you can't imbibe it and repeat it. Yeah, I mean, there's a time, but the majority of the time should be in the Beis HaMedrash, where we have books to study and to learn and to review. That's what adult education is. That's what it's all about. Well, the leader said, well, look, with the synagogue, they have people there. There are people davening with piety. There are people with beards. There are people serious and a million. Well, what percentage is it of the total congregation? What percentage is it? Oh, the leadership said, do they know? Do they realize what's happening? I don't know. But maybe you do. Maybe someone out there, maybe a yochi, maybe an individual said, you know, I think that's what we have to go back to. But you just can't stand by and acquiesce. You have to take a positive step. Approach your leaders. Tell them that this is what we want to have. We want to have a Beis HaMedrash, a study hall, with some mashgiach, with someone erudite who can answer all the questions that the Mishnah and the Torah comes up with, that bothers us, that we want to ask. That's what we should have. And if you're not on the line with that type of change, and you think of something better or something different, like, you know, having every member take upon themselves the study of 30 minutes of Torah during the day. During the day, when he's waiting for the subway, when he's have his coffee break, when he's thinking at his desk, when he's going home, when he's traveling here and there. 30 minutes a day to study on your own. That's another idea. Or maybe you have a better idea. But to sit and acquiesce and you can't do anything, that's wrong. Because we saw in 32-35 a plague was sent out. So much for that. Okay, now let's talk about free will, which is a very important subject and something that needs to be addressed, because we know that man is different than any other animal, and that he has free will. He has the ability to think and to plan and to want to do things that he feels will be good for himself or for mankind, unlike an animal who is programmed to take care of his needs, food, procreation, shelter, defense. Unlike that, a man is on a higher level, so to speak. So the question is, there's a sentence that says in Genesis, chapter 18, verse 19, says, "For I know," God says to Abraham, He made a covenant with him. He made a covenant, He made a pact with Abraham and his descendants. That for I know, I mean, there are other righteous people that wanted to be a surrogate for God, but God picked Abraham. For I know that Abraham will teach his children and his household the ways of God, of charity, justice, and righteousness. Charity, justice, and righteousness. KJ, right? Okay, so how does God know the future? If a man has that tiny opening of what he wants to do, how could God possibly interfere and know what man is going to do? I mean, he may know his thoughts, yeah, but how will those thoughts come into fruition? And the answer is that really God is a partner with man in the performance of his free will. And anything that happens is as a result of God letting that thought that man has come to fruition. Letting that thought that man has come to fruition. Guy wants to hurt somebody, or he wants to do kindness. God determines whether that thought comes into actuality. And it's like God is like a computer, and then the thoughts come into him all the time, and he sends out messages of what should be done and how it should happen, or if it should happen. I mean, that's where Jacob's ladder comes in. You know, he was standing at the bottom of the ladder, right? That's what it comments on Yaakov. He was sitting at the bottom of the ladder, and he wanted to, where there were briars and thorns and weeds, and he wanted to climb to the higher level, so to speak. And that's what the Rabbah, Sefer Mishnah Rabbah speaks of Jacob and the ladder that he wanted to search for God, to reach out for God, and the unknown, which man has an innate quality to seek. The man is called Mava in Gemara and Talmud because he's a seeker. He wants to seek out the unknown, the spirituality, the godliness, which he can never find. Which he can never find. Because no man can see God, experience God during his lifetime. He doesn't have the trappings to receive it. Exodus 33:20, no man can see God and live. But Moshe was on a higher level than anybody. And he went to Mount Sinai 3 times, and he spoke, so to speak, face to face with God. Yet in all those searchings that he wanted to seek God, just like we want to seek spirituality, but in actuality we don't know what we're just our soul wants to seek, which is really godliness. And we translate it into taking cruise ships, traveling. People from the east go to the west. People from the west go to the east. They're never satisfied. But we realize, like Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, realized that it was godliness that he was seeking. And even though he was so close to God, he said to God, God, show me your glory. That's in Exodus 33, chapter 33, 4, 5, and 6. Show me your glory. All the closeness God had with Moses, Moses couldn't, he wanted to get an imprint of God so that he would recognize him. So God put him in the cleft of a mountain, and a wind rushed by, and the back could be seen. And the back of Hashem is seen. Now when we say the back of Hashem, or the eyes of Hashem, or the hand of Hashem, the feelings of Hashem, those are anthropomorphisms. They are teachings to make it easier for man to see, to understand the teachings of God. Put it in man understandable terms, right? Like feelings, hand, God, outstretched arm of God, bloodied warrior. So what did Moses get? He got the back. I mean the back. I mean, what is, that's the best it can be described as. But it wasn't, God has no form, but it's on a higher level than any prophet or any individual. Because when a wind rushes forward, or when you see the back of an individual that's rather far away, could you recognize this person from the back? But it was a higher level for Moses, because he got to see the back. He saw the essence of God from a distance, so to speak, the back. That's an important concept. And you know, and what was the form of God? It said Hashem al Hashem Kel Rachum v'Chanun Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed V'Emes Noser Choser Le'alofin Noser Ovam V'Fesha V'Chato V'Nakea Lo Yinaka. That it will not cleanse, he will cleanse. Kindliness, all forms of kindliness, and he will cleanse, but not completely cleanse. Lo Yinakeh, not completely cleanse for transgression. And that's what happened in chapter 32 in Exodus 32. You know, after the idolatry, they started worshiping idols, and you know, the golden calf. So God said, let me wipe them out. I'll make you, Moses, a new people, and from your progeny, you be the progenitor, and you will be a new people. And Moses refused. He refused. He said, wipe me from your ledger. If you wipe the Jewish people out, wipe me out too. It was a test for Moses to see how much he loved the Jewish people, how much he loved his fellow man. So God said, I will forgive this sin, this transgression, but I will remember it when I make my final accounting. When I make my final accounting. I will cleanse, lo yinakeh, but not completely. So, we all have transgressions. And, you know, we're born with certain strengths regarding spirituality. Those have less aptitude for spirituality, have to work harder. Sometimes people with great spirituality find their environment and ambivalence poor, and they have to fight a lot of briar, thorns and weeds to get to the first rung. But by and all, as Solomon wrote in his book, Koheles wrote, one of the 24 written books of the Bible, 12:7, chapter 12:7, Ecclesiastes, in Hebrew it's Koheles. It says, the soul returns to God who gave it. The soul returns to God who gave it. The soul returns to God who gave it. And hopefully it's in a better condition that was given. And that's the glory that man seeks. Right? Man seeks the glory continuously, adornment and honoring for doing a specific chore, like being a hero or doing some commendable act that the mayor or the president of the United States claims to be so significant, and he glorifies you. But it's not the glory that we're really seeking. It's the glory in the soul world where God will acknowledge your efforts and your accomplishments that you performed in the world of planet Earth. So we see that we are punished quite frequently, especially during the Holocaust, where in Europe the Jews' leadership became so involved with Gentile culture and beliefs, and they threw out the Cheder, where the Beis HaMedrash, where they learned all day, and the communism and socialism. And God did a favor in that regard, in that He brought the Jews to Gehenna, to hell, because all of us are going to go through Gehenna. And that Holocaust generation went through Gehenna, but then they have the real world of the soul world that they get without any questions, because it says in the Torah, all Jews inherit the world to come. But if you die als Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name, then automatically you get to the soul world. I mean, did Hitler, a crackpot as he was, could he afford to send all kinds of trains to the concentration camps from all over Europe? They had a regular network of people involved in transporting those trains to the destination, and the manpower that was used, and resources that were necessary to keep those trains rolling continuously back and forth. I mean, he has America and the Allies on one front, and the Russians attacking him on the other front, and the trains kept on rolling to the very end. The Hungarians were the last. Kept on rolling, but he because he ruined the Pale of Settlements, where the Jews were thrown out by the other countries into this Pale of Settlements, and that's as far as he went. He couldn't cross the Caucasus, where the Russians were. Russian Jews were strongly attached to the rabbinical leaders. He didn't cross them, he didn't touch them. At that time they were very, very much involved in belief. Or did he go to North Africa, where Rommel, the Desert Fox, had uninhibited supplies from Italy, and the expeditionary forces of Britain defeated Rommel? That's because the Chacham of the Moroccan and the Algerian, those Jews, the Libyans and North African Jews, listened and obeyed and kept the commandments at that time. After the war, they went to France, and many of them became assimilated. But this is a teaching that we should all bear in mind, that God controls the world. We see free will. Man has free will. You know, in the Holocaust it was like a forest fire. Everything was wiped out, the good and the bad. But after the fire, the good trees came back again, and so it is with us. We understand the punishments that we took. And we must continue to teach, especially the Talmud, right? 24:12, Exodus. Stone tablets I gave you, the written books I gave you, and command to teach them. I command you to teach them. That's 24:12 in Exodus, and in Deuteronomy, I believe it's chapter 4:12. Write it down, check it out, do a little homework. Right? It's not, well, yeah, okay, the game's over. Turn off the TV, finish with that, go on to the next waste of time. And that's why when you have the Beis HaMedrash, you know, you get tired of learning Gemara, go to the ideology, go to Rabbi Millers, who got his teachings from Sinai through Slobodka. Right? He studied in pre-war Slobodka Yeshiva, a suburb of Kovna. Right? A suburb of Kovna. And he noted that the buses that left from Kovna, from Slobodka to Kovna on Shabbos used to run on an average of one bus an hour, every hour. And towards the end, they were running after every 5 minutes. Their buses were running from Slobodka to Kovna to do work on Shabbos. I made a covenant with you. God made a covenant with Abraham. Right? And in Genesis chapter 15, the covenant between the parts. The covenant between the parts. And in 17:1, I have made a covenant with you. The two people agreed. The descendants of Abraham and God. Circumcision will be a sign of the covenant. God says, I will be a God to you. It says that in every book of the Bible, the 5 books of Moses, I will be a God to you. Genesis 17:7, Exodus 6:7, Leviticus 26:12, Numbers chapter 15:41, and Deuteronomy 29:4. Check it out. I will be a God to you. And keep the covenant. But you have to stay 400 years in exile. It could have been a very peaceful exile, but they assimilated, and therefore they went into slavery. And when 400 years were up, they were let go. 60 years to the birth of Isaac, 130 years till Jacob went down to Egypt, and 210 years in Egypt, and a total 400 years. 30 years before was the covenant of the parts. But the point is that God keeps His promise. We don't keep our promise under the bargain, because we said Na'aseh v'nishma in Exodus 24. Chapter 24 in Exodus. Na'aseh, we will do and we will learn. We didn't keep our part of the bargain. And that's what it says over there in 29. It says, those people coming into the covenant from the 40 years that after the first covenant was made with Moses at Mount Sinai, right? Then the new people, the new generations passed into the covenant, from the drawer of the water to the carrier of the wood, and the leaders and the heads of the tribes. Everybody stood there, right? I'll make a covenant with you, and with its imprecations, and with its curses. Right? 29 in Deuteronomy. With its curses. We don't. God keeps His promise. He gave us the land of Israel. The whole world was after it. All the Christianity was after it. Yeah, we're talking about Christianity. It says in Numbers 29:19, Numbers chapter 23 verse 19. Man is not a God, nor is man the son of a God. Again, I'm not read. This is way before. This is the 5 books of Moses. Man is not a God, nor man is not a son of a God. And in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 17, in Matthew, he says, 1 iota of the commandment should not be broken. 1 iota of the commandment should not be broken. Now, the Jews, the Haredi, and the people that have the innate ability to seek God know what the truth is. We have one God, and the God made a covenant with us. He kept His covenant. He sent Trump to give us the Golan. Because you look at chapter 34, verse 1, it delineates the Bible's. The Bible delineates the boundaries of the Jewish nation. It delineates the boundaries of the Jewish nation. And all of a sudden, boom, Golan belongs to Israel. All the maps in the White House and throughout the world are changed to Israel being the Golan. And why are we having the Gaza area so much trouble? Because they gave away Gaza. The Jewish government, the Zionists. And why are religious Zionists? Because the Zionists don't believe in God. But they have made a new part of religious Zionists with the Jewish home and the United Right, whatever that means. Everybody has a new name every time. Or the Haredi that got voted, the Gouda and Shas got 16 seats plus 5 seats of the Jewish home, Peretz and Smotrich. And 140,000 votes were wasted with Bennett and Shachar. So, they used to have elections where they voted for prime minister separate and then for the religious, for your party separate. So the religious party came out so far ahead they had to rechange the law and make it one vote for the party. And that's why many religious people. So how do you vote for a person to head the Jewish country if he's not a keeper of the Shabbos? The Shabbos is a covenant between me and the Jewish people. And if you have the government of Israel not keeping the Shabbos, then how do you possibly vote for a party like that? You should vote for Aguda, vote for Shas, vote for Bennett or Jewish Home, Smotrich. Well, that's it. We have to strive, and we see it. God hopefully sees that we're striving and coming closer to upholding our ends of the Bible and of the covenant, right? Upholding our ends of the covenant, like it says in 29:10. We remember the covenant and the imprecations that are involved with it. Imprecations, the curses that are involved in it. And not you say, well, look at the Nobel Prize winners. 28% of the Nobel Prize winners are Jews, and 0.01 percent, if you want to change it, drop the decimal point, are Jews in the total population. 0.01. How do you account for that? Well, they had fathers that were intelligent. Come on! It's because God has helped us, give us a greater amount of intelligence to dig and realize the importance of keeping the Torah and obeying and performing its deeds. And it's important. Yeah, but look at the hospitals. This wing is named for this Jew. This wing is named for this Jew. This ward is named for this Jew. Jew after Jew after Jew. Fine. Help humanity. I mean, that's what we have suffering for. We have suffering because Jews suffer inordinately more than any other group, because we have empathy. We have empathy, we have feeling, the civil rights movements, all kinds of downtrodden people we have empathy for. And what else is suffering? Suffering gives greater piety. There's no other place to look for help. Go to our God, King of the universe, one God, God of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who stood in front of Mount Sinai. All the people stood. Not a few people, and then they handed it down to other people. But all the people stood in front of Mount Sinai, and they heard the words, "I am the Lord your God." Not that there's a God. Of course there's a God. But I am the Lord your God. He's speaking to the Jewish people. Chabad doing a great job. A lot of organizations like Chabad and CSY, they're going out one-on-one and they're dancing and praying and whatever. But what I'm talking about, the Orthodoxies. Oh, yeah. So we say, well, listen, I am, it's like a restaurant. But the Orthodox has got to learn Torah, right? Mishnah and Talmud, and break your chops. According to the effort, so is the reward. And well, I'm Reform. What do you mean Reform? It's a demagogue. They're demagogues. To think that they appeal to your reason and your feelings. They don't base it anything on traditions. When new problems arise, to base it on precedences that went before. No, they appeal to your emotions. The demagogues. I got a degree. I got a rabbi. Look, I got a rabbi. I'm a rabbi. It's okay. Don't do it. Don't worry. Don't. Yeah, fine. No refrigeration. They have electrics. This is the 21st century. All baloney, right? All baloney. And that's what it says in 20. Well, look. I see my time is up. Time is up. Got to go. Look. You see my number over here. Try to, here it is over here, 280-0662. Try to put some thought action into your thoughts. And let's make it for a better world under the auspices of God Almighty. Thank you.